I believe it is now. Thank you. So the first page you'll find a summary of the general fund overall, all our revenues, the expenditures, and transfers in. The second, third pages are the listing of departments and any changes within those departments from our 2022 budget estimate and the 2023 budget. The 24, 25, and 26 line items or columns, those include a 2 to 3% increase in revenues and 2% increase in personnel and 1% increase in operations. That's how those numbers are generated. So now that I've kind of outlined the way that the numbers are before you, I'll go ahead and get started with regards to our summary. So the 2022 revenues, we anticipated we would receive $10,660,000. We're estimating we will receive $10,900,000, and we are anticipating that in 2023 revenues will be $11,850,000. The increase for 2023 is in our local sales tax. Based on our prior track record, we've come in at a higher rate. So I've always been relatively conservative in estimating our sales tax revenues, but I think this year I was a little bit more aggressive, going to a 3% instead of a 2 or a 1.5, just because economic conditions seem to be positive. So our intergovernmental revenues, those are based on the state shared revenues, which include our state shared sales tax, the state shared income tax, the vehicle license tax. That's what makes up our intergovernmental charges. License and permits, you'll be able to tell that in the current year, our license and permit fees went up significantly. That's as a result of our high school. They came in and paid their permits, et cetera, for building and plan review. And so that's a pretty big chunk in the current fiscal year. For fire services, it's estimated to be consistent, about the same. For parks and recreation, we're anticipating a little bit of an increase. And fines and forfeitures are relatively the same, as well are leases and other miscellaneous. So with regards to our personnel expenditures, there has been a slight increase as a result of the new positions that you have before you, the position requests, as well as the 2% COLA. So in operations, there is a little bit of an increase, but you'll notice that some of that is as a result of the fact that we've had to budget against some items. For example, we're not sure if all the police vehicles will be receiving this fiscal year. So because we're not certain that we'll receive them this fiscal year, I've budgeted them again for the following fiscal year. And the same is for our ambulance that we ordered several months ago. That's also budgeted again in the 2023 budget, just because we don't know if we're going to receive it before the end of the fiscal year. And if we don't, we have to budget it in the 2023 fiscal year. So you'll notice that there are several items that are like that. There's also an increase in a lot of our services and supplies, as you may have noticed already. So that has had an impact on our estimates. Capital outlay, like I mentioned before, the 3 police vehicles are included in there again. The ambulance is included. A new parks vehicle is included, which will be financed. All these items are items that will be financed. I think there are maybe 1 or 2 that are capital outlay that are not, that won't be financed. The CIPs, I believe we're scheduled to have a CIP meeting in the next 2 weeks. Is that next week? So we can go over the capital improvements. The majority of these are parks. Then we have the debt service and transfers. So our debt service is essentially the transfer that we do each year. In 2023, you'll find that we have the animal control vehicle, the police vehicles again, the administration vehicle, and the parks vehicle. That's why you see a little bit of an increase there. And we're also finishing up the payment of previous police vehicles. So those all have an impact there, as well as our contingency. The transfer that you see here, the 105, is a combination of senior center and water development fees from the general fund. The AZ CARES or ARPA is a $200,000 transfer in, should we decide to utilize it for hazard pay for our frontline employees or premium pay. And that's something that I believe we'll be discussing later. And the $410,000 is, again, the financing cost. It's really an offset to the capital outlay line item that shows the financing coming in for that equipment. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you thus far.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Zarina, what is the total dollar amount for all these proposed increases?
For the proposed
including the cost of living, including these proposed salary adjustments and these new positions that you guys are requesting?
I don't have the number exact for just the 2% or for just the new salaries. It's really I can get that definitive number, specifically the amount associated with the 2%. The new positions I've outlined for you.
Yeah, it's 201,900 just for the new positions from the general fund.
Correct.
But I'm curious to see what's the financial impact of the other positions you guys are requesting to do increases, which from the looks of it is just department heads. But also, I want to know how much the financial impact is for this 2%.
Okay. I can get that number relatively easily for you. I don't have that readily available to me, but I can go ahead and get that.
Okay. So, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so you're proposing the increase for just department heads?
So last year when we did all the salary adjustments, so there was the new salary, the new compensation study. And so everyone who was not at the minimum was either brought to the minimum or received a 2%. Well, department heads didn't receive that adjustment. They just received the 2%. So that's why It was that we're proposing that adjustment in this fiscal year.
And it's included here, right?
It is included in there. Yes.
Just a reminder for the rest of council that there was a salary adjustment done to department heads when Hector was, I believe, interim city manager. So there was something already done.
That was quite a while ago.
Yeah, that was good. That was quite a while ago. But from what I'm looking at right now, you're looking anywhere between the range of, if I'm reading this correctly, $9 an hour increase
Well, I'm sorry, where?
on this the sheet that you had emailed us.
Okay, I don't have that in front of me.
For example, chief of police going from, oh no, wait a minute, I misread it.
Yeah,
Oh.
there's no increase that's significant.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I misread it. So I
Yeah.
guess that's why I need the information on
Okay.
the rate of increases per, because we just look at what do you call
Right.
it, the position and then minimum rate, but you guys aren't telling us exactly how much it's going up, because we have to consider the whole financial impact, not just saying, hey, we're going to go to this rate. And I do have a couple more questions.
Okay.
For HR, how are we as far as evaluations? Who's doing HR, Armando?
They're due at the end of the month.
They're in the process. Okay. For some reason, I thought they were due at the end of April.
No.
When are they due?
The end of May.
The end of May.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing, revenues. Is there any shortfall in revenues from any department?
Well, we are looking at a slight shortfall in fire services, just because there's been a little bit of a billing issue. However, we fully anticipate to have those revenues caught up by the end of the fiscal year.
How much of a shortfall?
I'm thinking about $100,000, anywhere 100, 150,000.
It's not a little shortfall.
Also, that
we're-
doesn't. Also about 60. Sorry, Mayor.
Sorry.
Also includes about 68,000 we're receiving from FEMA.
Right.
That was never part of the billing. It was off.
Correct. So that
the federal
150
government.
is part of that.
So what was the issue with the billing, the coding or?
I believe the submission of those invoices, of the billing invoices.
Correct me if I'm not wrong, do we have a deadline for Medicare and all that if you don't submit it in 90 days or how many? Depends on the Medicare, Medicaid, or the taxes. Yeah, because we need to find out because 66 months to 1 year. Obviously, so are we doing something with the building? It's a problem, the person or? Because this is not the first time we had in the past that we got Robin Magaña back because we lost a lot of money because of the coding and we're on the same.
So part of it is those that adjustment for the migrants that hadn't been accounted, and then part of it is this. However, I believe the plan that we have in place right now that we'll be executing by the end of the fiscal year will be able to recover most, if not all, of those revenues.
So you mentioned the plan. What is your plan so this won't be happening every 2 years or every year? The code. We might as well address it right now.
Yeah.
This will help.
And I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning of the ambulance service. When I began the ambulance service, I was doing the billing way back. I'm beginning way back in the Stone Ages. And City Hall decided they want to take it over, so they took it over. And as I prepared to leave, they found out that the person in charge of billing at City Hall was not doing it. They didn't know what they were doing. By then, I had gone to Yuma. So when I came back home, they had hired somebody to do the billing. And that person ended up getting fired by me within 2 months. Because they weren't doing it. I took over billing again. I hired Robin Magaña She corrected everything. Then she had some issues. She was afraid she was going to lose her insurance. Then we had that second issue. And then we hired Cheryl, and Cheryl corrected everything.
Let me just caution you not to reveal personal stuff about or employees by name. It's probably the best.
Yeah, thank you.
The best.
So anyway, the person that we hired to correct it corrected it and corrected it beyond even. We not only recovered the funds that had not been collected, we collected over that because of her abilities. Recently, we fell into the same problem we had with the previous person I hired that had gone by the side. The issue is this, okay, I'm going to bring this all into a nutshell. The billing belongs in finance. It always has belonged in finance, but they need someone that knows what they're doing because you work for the hospital. It's very specialized. What our plan is, we're going to take Cheryl, who's the most capable biller in Yuma County, period. She's going to catch us up to speed along with me. I'm working with her every day. Once we're caught up to speed, she's going to come to City Hall, and we're going to target some employees that have the skill set to do it. She's going to train them. Then when the revenues come in, that person's here. There's no here and there. Because part of the problem is that a lot of the revenues that are driven are no longer cash. You don't have people coming in paying at the counter here or going to or the fire department and paying. They're coming in electronically. And so they're hitting the bank, and I'm going to looking at the receipts going out for billing, but I'm not seeing the revenues coming in. The other part of it was in the last 3 years, we went through 20 people. Okay, and so that's like 95% of my department that I've replaced. And so we're so busy hiring people and training them. And I'll be honest, I lost sight of this. I'm going every day and checking up on my biller, making sure she's sending out the billings, which she's creating invoices, but they're not getting sent out. So I have an invoice and a chart with no billing being captured on their side. So we caught that, and we're going to fix it. Any other questions? Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe that would be the most essential revenue shortfall. Back to the do you have any other questions before we get into each department?
I just want to add that, we shouldn't wait for a councilman to ask in order to give that type of information. That's something that I don't know how long, and we're going to have a conversation how long ago we found out about that, but I feel that I think we should have been informed, and but that's a conversation that we're going to have later.
Okay. Then would you like to jump into the departments? Is that okay? Yeah. All right. So let's see. Okay. We'll look at mayor and council first. And mayor and council, you'll see that there's a significant increase in the in your operating budget, and that's as a result of the WISIPTA. The WISIPTA additional charges that we're anticipating if we are continuing to participate in WISIPTA. There is a fee that our annual dues are going to go up because they hadn't gone up in several years, and then there's another liability there that would become due in the next fiscal year, as well as about a 2% increase in overall operations, in addition to travel, et cetera. So there's not a whole lot of significant changes to your budget outside of those two items for WISIPTA. And then we have debt service.
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
I know a couple of weeks ago, I emailed the city manager to get information on our neighboring, San Luis or Yuma, just to see the compensation package for council members in those municipalities. I still haven't received anything to this to this date. Because when was the last time that council's compensation packet was looked at?
Hasn't been since I've been in here. I've been in my current position, so I'm not sure how long before that it was seen.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring this up is because I know my seat is up I'm up for re-election, but regardless if I'm, if I come back, if I'm re-elected or not, if we're being consistent with all departments, we're being competitive and we want to be competitive in all areas. I think that's an area that I think might have been forgotten. And for those council members that have been here for a while, I don't know when was the last time, if they recall. But I do have that.
I don't even remember.
We do have the information, and you should have probably received it too because it's part of the league. They sent a salary survey, and it's on there. Obviously, the city of Somerton mayor is at $8,400 a year. Vice mayor is at $72,000. Council is at $6,000. San Luis mayor is at $19,382. Council is at $9,965. City of Yuma, it's because it's not comparable because they're at $12,000 for the mayor and for council is at $3,600.
But they also do receive retirement.
And the retirement, we're waiting for PSPRS to let us know.
Insurance, which more than compensates for the low salary.
The Mayor Council, Jorge Lozano, City Attorney, the last research that I did on this area indicates that the last resolution that fixed your salary was about 20 years ago. So that just gives you a time frame as to how things have changed since then, and you're at the same level as 20 years ago.
Thank you. I think that's an area that I think should be looked at and considered. Again, I don't know if I'm going to be re-elected or not, but I see the work that council performs, and whether I'm here or not, I think that's. If we want to be competitive and we want to be on the same page, I think we need to look at all areas, not just some.
I agree.
And I think in all fairness, you're not able to do anything with your salaries after the new council gets sworn in. So the time to do it is before the election of a new council to avoid any type of argument that you're giving yourself a benefit. So this is when, for the benefit of the new council, because we really don't know who's coming back.
Right.
Is that in the law? We can't do it after a new council is sworn in?
Correct.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, well, it would be better to be done before because, there's 3 seats, at least for council, that are up for grabs. And it would just look, the perception wouldn't be appropriate, I would say.
What is the timeline for after a new council is sworn in to be able to do that?
It's got to be before, that's what you said, right?
Before a new council gets sworn in. So between now and election, primary election is August.
But
first week of
that,
August.
After that, how long do you have to wait before you're able to go in and make any type of adjustment?
It's when the new council gets sworn in. It takes effect.
But
Okay.
as far as PSPRS, it takes the same time of effect, but we're waiting until PSPRS gives us the green light to do this.
Good thing
It's out of our control.
I don't know. Yeah, because if you're saying that we can't increase council salaries after a new council is sworn in, that statutorily we're unable to do that, to increase council member salaries?
Correct.
Okay, so after a new council is sworn, how long do you have to wait before you're able to do that? Because if you're not able to directly after, I'm sure there's a timeline or some type of period that you have to wait.
I don't have the answer to that.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't it be, for the council coming in after November, it would be now. And if we do it after, then you would have to wait 2 years, right?
At least that's the recommendation.
We're going to have a next agenda, next council agenda.
Okay.
Oh,
Save you grief.
Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. So when that item comes up, then we can make that adjustment to the budget from contingency. That's where it would have to come from. Because we don't have those numbers yet, we can't really put something together for any type of package. But once we have the numbers, and if this happens after the budget is approved, then we can just make that adjustment. Okay. Mr. Gaudera, do you want to go over the administration and clerk budget?
Sure. For administration, as you see the difference of 124,000, but that's events, and also for the grant writer, that's where you see the difference of 124 on that increase. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Everything else stays pretty flat. And for clerk, obviously we do have elections that will be happening, so that's the payment of $5,300. It might end up being less. We're trying to figure that one out because last 2 years ago, that's what the cost was, about $55,000.
So those 124 events and grants, what's the breakdown on that?
The $60,000 is for events. The rest is for, the $60,000 is for the grant writer. And the difference is for events that was never on my line item. It was always on economic development or parks.
So that's salaries or?
No, that's operations.
Operations.
Correct.
But the monies we give to the Corn Festival and Tamale Festival, they're in the council budget?
That's correct. And I believe the last time the invoice for elections came in, it came in under Mr. Lozano's name. And I believe you were going to look into the cost for elections.
Yes, we'll send out an email to get a good figure for
the
cost of that election coming up.
Okay, for police, Chief, do you want me to go through it or? Okay, so for the police budget, there is a new dispatcher and a part-time records clerk in the personnel line item. And in operations, it's been consistent outside of replacing tasers. That's really the big item in the police budget this year. There are the capital improvement associated with the current year was the sewer line replacement, and you'll see that both in fire and police, and we anticipate having that completed before the end of the fiscal year. So really the tasers and debt service are the only two items that have changed. Outside of that.
Zarina, I have a question on the records clerk. Why do they currently have somebody on part-time?
I believe, go ahead, Chief.
Council Mayor, good evening. We have a contract staff that does data entry. So if we outside back a little bit on the audit from 2019, the recommendation was that it was not sustainable anymore to have 1.5 persons do this job. And this was due to the increase in demand from the FBI and the state to provide additional information on use of force, reporting that's going to be going to the FBI, and reporting to NIBRS, which is the data entry that provides us the data for being one of the safest cities in the state.
So are you looking to make that part-time into a full-time, or you're going to have two part-timers?
So we have a contract employee, so I'm asking for a part-time employee. And if the person were decide to continue and go on their retirement, then we would ask for a full-time.
Okay, because that's where the issue lies. There's a difference between two part-timers and a full-time position, because benefits come in play. And so that's why it caught my attention if you guys were looking to combine them down the road.
That is a plan to make that. I think the contract employee is waiting for us to pick up somebody in order for him to take off, and then it would require us to make that position a full-time position.
And just for further clarification on future practices of this type, is let us know ahead of time, because these are the questions that we have to ask, and we have to be aware of situations we have to be aware of, because as Zarina knows, if you combine two part-timers, now you have to pay, what is it, EREs or whatever it's called?
I don't think we're anticipating that in the next fiscal year. I believe the transition period next fiscal year, and before that went on staff member on the next.
Okay, so as long as you're aware that you won't
Yes,
be able to combine them this year and
Yes,
have one full
I
time.
have that clear.
Okay.
Do you need any further clarification for
No,
the
no,
dispatch? Okay,
that's-
thank you.
That's it.
And just I remember a little history that audit, that was a recommendation of a private audit firm that we got back when Chief Cavender was on board, and they did a thorough audit of our police department, and those were the findings that we were behind in personnel. Thus, a lot of evidence was really out of place and some other issues, and we're still trying to catch up to those audit findings from 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, and when we're going over each department budget, I make sure and have those discussions with our department heads, is making sure that we're not looking to transition someone between part-time and full-time in the middle of the year. So that's why we requested a part-time position for the 2023, and then potentially if that transition goes well, then it would become a full-time in 2024. Or yes, 2024. So let's see. Oh, animal control. I don't believe there have been any significant changes in animal control outside of budgeting the animal control vehicle again in 2023 and budgeting the debt service payment within that department. There was some personnel turnover there. So that's what, essentially that's the effect that it had, the net effect. For fire, I believe, would you like to talk or do you want me to go through? Okay, so I believe the change in our fire department budget is your medical, your physicals. I believe they're due. So we didn't have them this year. We had them the previous year, and now they're due again in 2023. So that's really the most significant change within the fire department, as well as just the smaller operations that the smaller increases in normal operations. Let's see. And we budgeted the ambulance again and the debt service payment. And so the debt service payment, we don't have an exact figure for yet. This is an estimate, but I know that that's coming with the ambulance. So that's been adjusted for. All the personnel also includes the 8% increase to medical. I believe there is also a 5% increase in workers' comp. And I don't believe there was a significant increase in PSPRS or ARS this fiscal year. So I'll go ahead and move forward with.
Hold on, I have a question really quick. On the second ambulance chief, are we or Zarina, either one, are we at a point where we're carrying the bigger load of, because I know we had received a grant, I believe, from Amanda. We were only liable for a portion of their salaries.
I'm not sure.
Wasn't it set up that way?
It was a SAFER grant that we received. The SAFER grant, we received that was from FEMA. We received a grant from FEMA in 2019, and that covered 75% of personnel. Then in 2020 and 2021, it covered it. Then it tiered off. So it was 75, 75, 20, and then it went to 75, 50, and then 25. So the end of that grant was in 2020. So December of 2020 was when the final grant.
Okay, so we've been paying the last couple of years. We've been paying 100% of personnel. Okay, I was just trying to figure it out. I guess he wants to know how much the COCOPA fund.
Nation, how much do they fund for?
So
5 employees, or
they fund, is it 6 and half of the billing? So is it 5 or? Oh yeah, no, the COCOPA, the COCOPA Nation. and 20% of operations.
And this, when was the last time we increased, or is this been for how long?
It-
20 years, 10 years?
Well,
They
as
bought
we
us-
increase, so for example, our operations are increasing currently, so they pay whatever portion of that we increase. So they pay a flat 20% of operations by quarter.
They still pay the percent.
That's correct. And they pay
a fire
us,
truck.
I'm sorry?
They paid for a fire truck, so.
So
that's a
yeah, they
good
pay,
way.
yeah, they're, and in fact, we have to bill them. I think I have to get caught up on that billing too. So, yes, they go ahead and they pay for is it 5 full-time and then half the billing specialist? 6 full-time and then half the billing specialist, and then 20% of operating costs. And that is reflected in the revenue portion of the general fund on that first page. You'll see that. Let's see. Do you have any other questions regarding the fire department? Okay. The court. I keep flipping to the next page. I'm getting ahead of myself. With regard to court expenses, there aren't any significant court expenses that I can find. It was really flat. Just the anticipation of additional costs is what's really affected that budget. It's been rather consistent outside of the new position that we included in 2022 for the court safety officer. And really that's been the only significant increase there. In parks, there is a position and a half. A position and a half in maintenance. And if you look at your printout, you'll see there's I'm sorry, Jesus, would you like to come and talk about your budget or? Okay, so the position and a half that you see before you, as well as it was actually a part-timer as well, but only the part-time maintenance staff and the full-time maintenance staff are included here. I believe part-time did increase. I believe that part-time increased as a result of, no, the district is a separate fund. So I believe it was part-time for, was it events or the maintenance, not the maintenance, the facilities, the part-time facility staff is in there. I think that was the main increase within the parks budget. With regards to operations, also contractual labor for programs. Contractual labor for programs is the majority of that $57,400. In capital outlay, the capital outlay for this $90,000 is a vehicle and equipment, mowing equipment, maintenance equipment for parks. The CIPs are the ones we went through last week. We'll go into the 330,000 more in depth, or if you'd like, I can pull it up right now. But since we're going to have a separate council meeting specifically for those CIPs, it's completely up to you. Mayor. The CIP meeting? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, contract labor for program services.
Jesus, can you come to the podium, please?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members, Jesus Mesa, Parks and Rec Director. The contractual is intended for the park maintenance also and for recreational purposes. And the part-timer is going to be for facilities and the FTE we're requesting is for park maintenance.
What are you guys gonna? You said park maintenance contract work. What specifically are you looking at
For park
contract
maintenance?
work?
Yeah, for spraying the non-districts and any contractual services with our.
Oh, more like retention basins. Then.
Yeah, the non-districts. Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever's not included.
Okay. And any plans to, because I see you guys currently have a 0.5 maintenance worker right now. Were you looking to combine this additional 0.5 maintenance worker with that and make it a full-time, or again, 2 part-timers? Okay, so they're gonna have 2 part-timers.
Yeah, 2 part-timers.
Yeah, because they currently have one already. So he's asking for 1.5. So the only one that, quite honestly, if we're looking to sub out all these districts, especially the retention basins within the district, I don't know why you would ask for a maintenance worker. I mean, for that, quite honestly, I don't think it's needed if you're going to be subbing everything out.
Yeah, we will have more traffic next year with the ongoing activities at the community center. So that's almost going to be a job of its own.
Yeah, but that's not that's why you're already hiring the 1.5, but you're also including another one that it says improvement district. You can't have somebody working at the community center and be billing me that lives in a district, because I'll tell you what, I'd be screaming and hollering. So quite honestly, I don't think if you're going to sub out all the maintenance work at the districts, I don't think you need a maintenance worker there in those districts.
And possibly the desert landscaping projects that are approved. And
on those projects, the city's not going to do them, right?
Yeah.
We'll contract them out. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why there's no
So
need.
you'll be charging the districts for that, right? For that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously, you'll be charging for another
part-time.
For the part, for the regular maintenance. Yeah.
It all will depend also on mayor council decision if we want to do 3 at a time, or have a plan in place to do 3, 4 at a time, or do them all at once, which is going to cost the districts, the different districts, that difference, which is about, I think it was $75,000.
Yeah, but
$25,000 per retention.
Well, I mean, and that's gonna, let's put in voters or the people that live in those areas more money, whether they have to pay. So on top, just, on top of that, you charge them for that to make it cleaner, still charging another maintenance.
See, and quite honestly, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. You don't know how much maintenance is going to be needed there in that particular. If you go zero-scape, you go zero-scape, and it's they'll probably show up like once a year, and you're already charging them a part-time employee.
Well, even if it's zero-scape, you might have to obviously hire the operations side to maintain the spraying, and they'll be there 4 times a year to spray, maybe 2. But
yeah, but it'll be very minimal. Though. It shouldn't be a part-timer.
Mm-hmm.
You can still contract somebody, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Weed eater, or weeds or whatever, roundup or whatever needs to be done.
It goes back to whatever mayor and council want to decide with those retention basins, as far as how do you want to spread them out.
Yeah, and it goes back to the level of service we want to offer the residents. I mean, because the zero landscaping does, it's gonna need further maintenance is not going to be just rocking the areas, and then it's not going to be need any further maintenance. You need the regular maintenance and the weed control, the trash, taking care of the level of service in general, of the retentions, because there is going to be some weed control and the spraying.
Are we charging our salary to the district?
Yes.
How many employees?
One.
For all the.
Yes.
Yes. That's been probably for 8 years, good 8-10 years.
Maybe they were maybe allocated on the right place.
Retention basin.
For some areas, we're not charging enough, and that's what you see, obviously, the maintenance issues. It's been like this for years.
Yeah. So, but they got prison labor too. No.
That's what it's also being proposed. It's years ago. And years ago, we should have also looked at the way some of these retention basins being developed, either being zero-scape. Things do change over the years, just depending on developments and our code, and at the same time, what we want for our neighborhood. Sometimes it's the idea of having one area of a retention basin to serve as a community park, because that's basically what they have become. All retention basins have become some sort of park, but not all parks or open space areas for some sort of activity are needed in an area where might be, I don't know, maybe a 100 by 60 foot lot for as a retention basin. Do we really need to put trees and bushes in that area? Well, it can be maintained by zero-scape, maybe a couple of bushes here and there, but mostly should have been river rock or an area to zero-scape that whole area and just spray it to maintain the weeds. But it has, as the communities have grown and developments have come in, we have added trees and make it more of a some sort of recreational area for the kids. But sometimes we don't look into how close it is to a park or open space. And I know that, as far as the development has occurred, we try to do the best for that community or for that neighborhood to make sure that there is amenities. So the amenities might be an open space and or park or basically zero-scape. But as the years have progressed, some of these retention basins have turned into some sort of recreational, where they might have not been a recreational, and we turned it into a recreational for whatever motives at that time, either mayor and council decided, or I don't know what the decision was there. Actually, Vice Mayor and myself had a discussion close to a retention basin that's close to his house. I remember playing there with the kids been playing there, but it's really tiny and maintaining. I think there's 2 trees and a curb and some grass. So even then, that takes time out of somebody just to maintain it. So yes, one person for all these retention basins is not a lot.
We still pay the contract.
As much as we can. Unfortunately, the contract labor has increased tremendously. So trying to have contract labor to maintain is.
I mean, we still use the money.
Yes, and Jesus has tried to spread it out in certain retention basins more than others, but it's hard to maintain.
So I guess for me, my question is: are we increasing the funding at an appropriate level to zero-scape all these retention basins to avoid further additional employees being charged to these districts? Because I tell you, I don't think the last couple of years, especially through COVID and now, that retention basin is not used for anything right in front of my house. But yet there's grass. Yeah. There's obviously water being used to water that particular grass. So all it's doing is sitting there, and it's probably best served to be a zero-scape, where we pay the one-time fee of getting it there, and then just the light maintenance, instead of having to keep going and always paying water and whatever else.
Yeah, and what happens at times if we don't consider the general maintenance that it's going to go towards the zero landscaping areas, which we're planning on turning the smaller retention areas into zero landscape areas. The level of service is not going to change because there's not a day in and day out person going into the areas. The rock's going to be out of place because kids use them to play around, and it's vandalism that is ongoing. So we need to maintain order and keep those areas in good shape. The weed control, the grass that grows in between when we're spraying. So it's not going to be like we're going to do the zero landscaping and then there's not going to be any maintenance needed for the whole year. It's still a maintenance.
We got 5
concern.
minutes and we need to. But I guess there's a lot of discussion. Let's bring a plan, more detail, maybe for next meeting, and we can discuss this further.
On the retention basis?
Retention, the plan for the extra employees and, where money's going to go.
Thank you. There's really, there are a couple of other departments that we still have to go through. Maybe the next council meeting, the next special session, we can go through those. Thank you so much for holding this special work session to go over these numbers. And I appreciate your questions. I'll get the numbers for the COLA and the numbers for the department impact. I just wanted to follow up as well on the billing, on the fire, on the medical billing for fire. I guess the reason why we hadn't addressed that before is because we wanted to have all the information readily available to you with the plan in place. We were going to get that to Mr. Cabrera before the end of the week so that he could inform you of what the issue was, what our plan was, and how we were to execute the plan, as well as when we anticipated all the revenues to come in. So we hope to have that to you by the end of the week. And again, apologies for not having sent that to him before. Thank you.
One thing, Serena, that I think that helps me, this is more of an overview, but if you can send like a spreadsheet or something with a drop-down menu that we can go further into the weeds, that creates more questions, just at least prior to when we have the meeting, you have that available.
Sure, I can definitely put something together for you. I know that I've done that in prior years, but I wasn't aware that you wanted it.
I know Councilwoman Garcia loves it. She looks at everything. Do you really?
Okay, I can definitely send that out.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again.
Okay. So 6:56. Meeting's adjourned.
No sé, no me